Not bad, not bad. We can fetch all our products and we are in good shape. But we would need to add some code in fetch products because I would want to handle loading, I would want to handle error, and also I would want to set everything up with use reducer, correct? And we're going to start by adding more properties in our initial state. At the moment, the only thing we have is the sidebar thing. Now I would want to add more properties. Now the first one will be loading, but since there's going to be two loadings, there's going to be one for single product and one for all the products. The naming is going to be a bit more annoying. We're going to go with products and then loading. So underscore loading. And by default, it is going to be false. Then I would also want to handle the error. And we're going to go with products underscore and then error. Again, by default, it is going to be false. Then I would want to set up my actual product. So eventually I know that if everything is correct, I'm going to get my product. And then I also have the feature product, correct? And feature products, I will pull out in the actual reducer. So I'll get all the products. I will pass in as my payload. And then eventually in the reducer, I will pull them out. So by default, they are going to be featured products. And they're just going to be empty array. There's going to be 3 more properties for single product. So there's going to be loading, error, and product. And we can add them right now or we can skip it. Doesn't really matter. I think I'm going to skip it for now and we'll add them later once we start dealing with single product. So that should be our start. Then, of course, for every action I would want to do, I would need to set up the actual action variable, correct? And you can probably already guess that that is already taken care of. Where notice I have one for get products begin. So this is going to be for loading. Get product success. This is when we get our products and there's no error. And also I would want to handle the error. That's why I'll add get products error. And if we take a look at the products context, we can see that I imported all of these 3 actions, correct? So I have these variables. And then if we take a look at the reducers, we also see that in a products reducer, I have all these 3 actions. So now, of course, in the function, I would want to set up those actions using dispatch. So I'm going to navigate back. We have fetch products. And the first thing that I would want to do is dispatch the loading one. And remember the action, the name for that action was get products begin. So we're going to go dispatch. And then I'm going to pass in type, of course. And we'll say get products and then begin. So this is going to set up loading. Now, of course, there's going to be right away an error. Why? Well, because remember, in a products reducer, are we taking care of that? No. But just to prove my point, I will still invoke it. And there it is. Now, of course, we have this big fat error where we have get products begin. Well, there's no matching type. So we navigate bravely back to the products reducer and we'll set this up, correct? I'm going to say if and then action and then type is equal to get products and then begin. Then what I would want? Well, I would want to return all the properties that I have in a state. And what was the property for the loading one? Well, we're going to go with products. And I believe it was loading. And we'll set it equal to true, right? So once we start fetching the products, I'll set this one equal to true. And you can probably already guess that somewhere in our project, we will be looking for this property for the value. And then depending on that, there's going to be a spinner or there's not going to be a spinner. So I'll save this one. So now we shouldn't have the error and we're definitely loading. Now, I'm not going to set up right away some kind of spinner in the application. What I would want you to show is the fact that we can always check everything with components. So we have products provider, correct? And notice I have this reducer and check it out. So at the moment, sidebar is false, but the products loading is true. But if I refresh, you'll notice, of course, that it is going to be false and then it will turn true. Now, it's going to be a little bit fast, so it's going to be hard to see, but just keep in mind that in this case, I'm not going to build something to showcase that we're loading, but you can always go back to the components to React DevTools and just check your state values. And this is exactly what we're going to do. So we begin fetching product. So we start loading. And now, of course, we would need to handle two cases. One for the error. And then the second one is if everything is successful. And for that, I'm going to set up a try and catch just because. So I'm going to go with try catch. I'll move my response in the try block. And I also would want to right away pull out my data. So I'm going to say const and then products is equal to response data. Remember, the array was in the data property. And then I'm not going to console log the response in this case. What I'm going to do is eventually set up the error. So I might as well just leave the console log off and be done with it. So we have products. It is equal to response data. That is equal to our array. So now, of course, let's try setting up the action. So we're going to go with dispatch. And the name of this action is going to be get product success. And as far as the payload, well, I'll pass in my products. So I'll say here, payload is equal to a product. So we save it. We should get our products. But first, of course, there's going to be a big fat mess because we're not handling that in our reducer. So in order to fix our error, I would need to navigate to my reducer and handle that. So in this case, of course, we're talking about get products and then success. And there's two cases. There's one for featured ones. So we'll have to filter our existing array. And the second one is just dumping the products that we're getting into our state property, correct? So let's navigate to products reducer. Again, what action type are we looking for? Well, we would want get product success. So if action and then dot type is equal to get products and then success, like so, then of course I would want to update both of my arrays. And let's start with the featured ones. Because remember, we have the array and each object has that featured property, meaning if the product is featured, then it has the featured property. If not, then there's no property by the name of featured. So before I return my state, I can simply say get featured product, featured, and then products, and that is equal to action payload, since the products are coming in payload. And I'll right away set up my filter. And I'll say if the product has the property featured true, then of course I would want to return this product. So this is my product. And you know what? I think I'm gonna do implicit return, where I'll just say product, then featured, and equal to true, like so. So those are gonna be my featured products. And then the second thing is all the products, correct? And one thing you'll notice here that I still get the error, even though technically we handled that. Why? Well, because we're not returning a state. So that's important, meaning we're not returning anything from this condition. So if I'll set up simple return, then of course I'm not going to get this error. But keep in mind that you will get this error even as you're working on this action type if you're not returning something. So just in case that trips you up, why was that happening? Well, because we don't have the return. And the moment we add the return, there's going to be no error. And as far as the return, well, I would want to return all the state, correct? And then I would want to set my loading to false. Remember, initially we set it to true. So let's go over here. We'll say products and then underscore loading is equal to false, of course. And then two things. First, I would want to set my products, so the products array, to my full payload. And then featured products will be equal to the new array. So let's try it out. We're going to go with product is equal to a action and then payload, of course, and then featured products. Well, since the name is exactly the same as I have for my variable, I can just do the ES6 thing where I don't need to set it equal to featured product. And of course, now we can save. And I'm going to navigate to the bigger screen. And again, I'm going to show you what we've got. So in the beginning, we should have empty arrays, correct? So let's refresh here. We should have empty arrays. And as you can see, it happens somewhat quick. So now, of course, I have the product. Loading is false. And featured product is the array of 6 items. And then the last thing that I would want is to take care of the error. So inside of the products context and inside of the catch block, what I would want is dispatch the error. So if there's ever an error, I'm going to say dispatch. And then as far as the type, well, we need to pass in, of course, object first. And then we're going to go with get product. And I believe it was error. So get underscore product error. So that's my type. And we're not going to pass anything else in, but we'll handle that in the reducer. So now in the reducer, we'll set up one more action here. And we'll say if action and then type is equal to get and then product error. So then, of course, I would want to return my state. So dot state. So I'll copy all the values. But two things that I would want to change is I would still want to set loading to false. Remember, we were always doing that. So products loading should be false. And then the error should be true. So in here, we're going to go with products and then error. And that should be set to true. So save it. And we should have a nice function that handles loading, that handles success, as well as the error. And once we've got this in place, of course, now we can move on to the next step.